Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bensavanga, and welcome to Facts Over Fear. You guys, we're kind of in the middle of the news cycle from hell as it is, but literally, there is some breaking news that just happened a few minutes ago. Democracy Docket is now reporting that SCOTUS is greenlighting the 11th hour Alabama redistricting plan for the 2026 election. So the United States Supreme Court is basically saying that Alabama will be allowed to select a different map for this year's congressional elections in a stunning last-minute move to interfere with yet another state primary election that has already begun. Now, this order means that Alabama will discard its court-ordered congressional map for the 2026 primary elections and use a 2023 map that the courts had previously struck down as a violation under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which we know the Supreme Court has decided isn't important, and they want to gut that as well. Joining me to discuss this and so much more around this topic is my friend Dave Bracey. He is the founder of Barrel and Flow and a podcaster at heart, really. So I'm excited to have him here with me. I always love chatting with him. I just wish we were talking about something a little more fun, but here we are. So hey, Dave, how are you?
Uh, I'm not terrible. It's not always fun to hear that my voting rights are in jeopardy, more and more so by the minute. But I would say I disagree with the stunning part.
Mm.
This just feels like just like a ball that's been rolling and gathering for quite some time. And once Louisiana got overturned, it was just
Mhm.
a matter of time before they, started like knocking them all down. So yeah, that sucks. But I did
Mhm.
have some fried chicken today, so I don't know how much people know about Pittsburgh, but that's a rarity in this city. So you gotta take the good with the bad, I guess.
You do have to take the good with the bad. I just want to make it clear. I did not use the word stunning. Those were not my words. Those were the words
Mm,
of the Democracy Docket that I was quoting
okay.
to set us up. Just want to say, because I agree with you, none of this is stunning. All of this is incredibly predictable and pathetic, not stunning. But at the same time, I think if you've been paying attention and you've watched the fall of our democracy, really since Trump came on the scene, in the way that he did, the expediting of this process since 2016, it's like watching a car crash in slow motion that continues to accelerate. So when we're looking at this, the topic I wanted to discuss was adjacent to this day, because there was a political firestorm that literally just happened, I think 2 days ago, that was also erupting in Alabama. And this was after the House Speaker, Nathaniel Ledbetter, had been accused online of calling for the overturning of the 14th Amendment during a press conference about redistricting. Now, Ledbetter is claiming that is not what he meant. He said that he was criticizing federal court rulings against Alabama's maps, which now we know they are not using, not the amendment itself. But I mean, come on, let's be real. I mean, they were chomping at the bit to start finding ways to dismember the 14th Amendment, which, guys, was ratified in 1868. I mean, when they talk about wanting to go back to the olden days, they really want to go back. Did you hear about this at all, Dave? What was going on in Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about like, dismantling the 14th Amendment, I think they just want to dismantle the Constitution, right? Like you
Boom.
talking about going back, they want to go back to like England days and like whatnot, right? Like I think people forget that this country, was not, we get told that it's all about like, freedom and, freedom from, Great Britain and this, that, and the other. But, ultimately, it was just a bunch of rich people that were sick of paying taxes to the English folks. And they were like, why are we like collecting all these taxes and sending it across the seas when
Mhm.
we can just keep it for ourselves? And that was the American Revolution. And, they sent in a bunch of poor kids to fight it and, let the rich folks off the hook. You know what I mean? So, when you look at like, the Constitution and, the Bill of Rights and like the founding of this country and whatnot, it was founded on, a bunch of rich folks just trying to get richer. And, the beauty of the Constitution and Bill of Rights and these various protections and whatnot, have allowed us to fight, for a more perfect union and all these various things. But, at the end of the day, like that idea of, Anglo-Saxon domination, rich white wealth, especially, straight men, in that regard or whatever, has never really like left. And every, bit of progression that we've had since then, has been hard fought and it's not guaranteed. And it can always be rolled back as, like, I guess in my lifetime, I mean, I've watched a lot of it,
Mhm.
but I guess the biggest thing was when they overturned Roe versus Wade for me. And that like really made me like understand how like fragile these rights were, and are, you kind of like grow up thinking like, all right, cool, like it's in the Constitution or it's some sort of Supreme Court ruling or whatever. We're good, we're fine, we've already dealt with that. But you come to you come to find out that it's always under fire, and nothing is safe.
Absolutely. If you're just joining me, I'm chatting with my friend Dave Reese, the founder of Barrel and Flow. And I want to just, for people that may not know too much about the 14th Amendment, I just want to give a few little clip notes on it. It was ratified in 1868 after the Civil War. It guarantees citizenship to anyone born or naturalized in the United States. It included key protections around equal protection, due process, and civil rights. So it granted citizenship to formerly enslaved people and anyone who would be born in the United States from 1868 on. The due process prevents states from depriving people of life, liberty, or property without legal process. And the Equal Protection Clause, these are just some highlights, which requires states to apply laws equally to all people. And when you read all of that, none of this is surprising to me, Day, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, how we're seeing them trying to blow up the 14th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act. At the same time, we're seeing these ICE detention centers exploding, as well as these AI data centers, and the uber wealthy, the billionaire class trying to take people's land to convert them into these data centers, which we know is a part of big surveillance, which we know feeds into this ICE machine. I mean, to me, the idea around policing in all of this, it was baked into the fabric of this country. And to your point, this idea of trying to create these amendments and these pieces of the Constitution to bring some kind of equity, to watch it being dismantled piece by piece is just horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's wild because we fund Israel and we see, what they're doing, and you're just going over there and taking land and, genocide and the whole nine. And then they're coming over here and they're training our police forces. They're infiltrating, our government, and there's, heavy hand of influence with APAC and all that. And, they're militarizing our police, taking away rights from women, and everyone else. And like, just it is like it's very scary. And it's like it's sad. It's almost like watching a very slow train wreck.
Yeah.
Because you see that they've gutted the education system over the course of, last 40 to 60 years or whatnot. And so folks are like, stupid, we're poor, thanks Reagan, we haven't like raised the minimum wage.
Uh-huh.
So you have these folks that are either, like too busy, broke, and uneducated to do something about it, or they're too fearful to like understand, like, to understand that their rights are also being taken away. Like white folks are very afraid of all the things, right? Which allows them to pass all of these very, to take away these rights. And I get it because, I just got sunburned for like the second time in my life a couple of weeks ago when I was in New Orleans, and I'm peeling and whatnot, and it's very, so like if the sun was as terrible to me as it is to white folks, on a regular basis, I too would be very fearful of most things outside, right? And I believe that they've utilized these fears in order to get this, small minority of people, very fearful and like riled up. And then they're chipping away at all these like voting rights so that, I mean, it was already rigged. You got the, the electoral college and whatnot. Various states have bigger pool than other states, and then you have again what they're doing with the gerrymandering and like rigging these elections and whatnot. So like it's already kind of like you stack the deck, but then you just keep like it feels like they're funneling more and more power into the hands of the stupids, the
Mm-hmm.
easily fearful stupids. And again, like it's hard for like it's hard for people to it's hard for people to like fight back. I feel in the sense that they are either too busy, they're not aware of the process, or they just feel like their vote doesn't matter. And like
Yeah.
to some degree they're right. Like I
Mm-hmm.
mean, me going out and voting in Pittsburgh, cool, I'm gonna do it, right? Like I'm gonna go
Mm-hmm.
out and like I'm gonna put in my vote for the president or whatever. But like it's blue. Like Pittsburgh's been
Mm-hmm.
blue since blue's been blue, right? So like cool, I'm gonna do my part, but like it still it doesn't weigh as much as somebody in say Wyoming or something along those lines. And like, I see why it's hard to keep saying to people like go out and vote, but when one when you do vote, your vote isn't weighed as much as someone else vote. And then two, the way that these Democrats are going out and like, they're always coming to the progressives, to the blacks, to the women, the gays and whatnot. And they come and they go, oh, vote for us. We're gonna fight for you. But then when you actually look at their voting records, they're not. You know what I mean? And they come back to us every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years or so, and they go, vote for us, we're gonna fight for you. But then they don't. And
Mm-hmm.
again, like and while I vote in every election all the time, it is harder and harder for me to say to people like, go out and vote. It matters, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
because decreasingly it does. Like I mean, the fact of the matter is that it decreasingly does matter. And what they're doing over here in Louisiana, that now here in Alabama, and what they're continuing to doing with gutting these rights, is harder and harder to say to people like voting is the thing, right? Like I
Yeah.
think voting is a way, but I also think we need to start talking about like other forms of change, other forms of I mean, I'm all about civil disobedience, but ultimately other mechanisms of change outside of just voting, because at some point, that like what they're doing with all of this is really, I mean, trying to make the vote actually not matter. I mean,
Right.
in that regard.
No, I agree, and I hear everything that you're saying, and I feel like I'm in the same boat where it's like I've always voted in every election from like the local stuff all the way up to the presidentials. I always tell everybody to vote as well. But I hear what you're saying in the sense that I think we need to look at voting as one of the tools in our toolbox, but there are other tools to your point, and organizing and putting collective pressure, general strikes, like withholding our dollars. I mean, I think there are lots of things, civil disobedience. And I hope it doesn't come to that, but when you break the social contract between the working class and the billionaire class, if they're not holding up their end of that bargain and people can't afford to live, why would they be surprised then when people do take to the streets and not in a let's say a um
A civil
friendly
manner.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
because because the truth of it is, I think people are hitting breaking points in terms of they can't drive to work at this point because the gas prices are too high. They can't afford groceries. The electricity bills have gone up and up because the AI centers are being built in their backyard. Elon Musk is going on television saying that we shouldn't have, Social Security anymore because it's a quote unquote entitlement. And so it's like they keep ramping up this energy, and then they're shocked when people lash out. Like look at the Luigi Mangione situation, which I look at that and I say, well, the system is violent. Why wouldn't the response to the system be violent? And I think if they want it to kind of come down in the temperature, because that's what the Democrats keep telling us, right? We've got to play nice. We've got to play nice. Well, why? Why should we play nice when they're actively killing people in these ICE detention centers whose only crime might be some paperwork or might be no crime at all, right? So to me, it's just, I think we're getting to that point where if you're not actively speaking out on these things or doing some form of protest, whatever that looks like in your own life, I think this is all going to hit you in the face really hard when you see what is coming. And that's kind of my concern, Day, which is why I continue to be so consistent about speaking and trying to educate as best we can on these topics, because I want people to understand the reality of the situation, that they are not going to just give up power. We don't have an opposition party. And the Democrats love to dangle carrots and never follow through, because then they actually don't have to legislate anything of change and of meaning either. So if we really want to use our vote, quote unquote, it's like, get rid of them all unless they have actual progressive ideas like, you know, solidifying human rights into existence and creating a system where people are actually placed over these mechanisms of profit that are killing them. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, you're right. The Democrats are just a lame duck, like party. They don't really, they're there to maintain the status quo.
Hmm.
And I think that, like, so, folks like us, we're always talking about it. We're active, we try to stay aware of what's happening. I think the biggest issue really is how do we, reach the folks, like the masses, right? The folks that, again, are too busy. They're working 2, 3 jobs.
Right.
So, like, I
Right.
mean, how the hell are they supposed to be staying on top of the various voting rights and,
Hmm.
what SCOTUS is up to, this, that, and the other? Recently, here in Pittsburgh, there's been a lot of talk about, children running wild and this, that, and the other in the streets of downtown. But, you look at the various, programmings that have been gutted, the education system, the extracurriculars, and you look at the fact that these parents, again, I mean, they're working 2, 3 jobs. I was a latchkey kid, right? So, I mean, like, I remember coming home and, having my own key, let me and my sister in. Maybe there was some food, left there for us to like heat up. Don't answer the door until, mom comes back,
Hmm.
things of that nature and whatnot. So there was a lot of room for deviant behavior and boredom. And, like, I guess the question is how do we reach those folks that are in the trenches, that are they are the masses, and how do we get them to show up and to understand, like, what it is, like what's at stake, and also find the timing to do so? Because again, if I'm working 2, 3 jobs, like, yeah, you're having a march on Saturday, but like I gotta go to how many errands I gotta run, I got my kids I gotta
Hmm.
take care of, like, and I mean, I think there's a lot of that is lost in, the talks and, like, what do we do next? And when we talk about, showing up to the voting booth, I mean, they've already made it, the voting booth, extremely hard to show up to.
Hmm.
I mean, why don't we have automatic registration? Why don't we have term limits in various positions and, campaign reform and, various things that other developed nations have? There's a lot of reasons, for that. But ultimately, until we're able to have those conversations and find ways to kind of like meet the people where they are,
Hmm.
to organize, then you're going to have this again, because the thing about the Republicans is that they're very organized. They're very organized because, I mean, they're a lot of them are one, issue votes.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
really, if you tie it all together, the one issue is white supremacy.
Yeah.
You'll veil it behind this, that, and the other, or whatever, but they all rally behind white supremacy. So, you can have as many inconsistencies in your policies and speech as you want, as Donald Trump does. I mean, he contradicts himself on a regular basis. But when you talk to his base, they're like, I don't care. They're like, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, well, he's diddling kids. And they're like, I don't care. Like
Hmm.
every
Hmm.
line that
Hmm.
we thought, and and it's so frustrating to see. I don't have a whole lot of moderate friends anymore. I've been fortunate enough, and I guess unfortunate, and I'm self-employed, right? So I mean, it comes with its pros and cons. But like,
Hmm.
I don't have like coworkers that like
Right.
I have to share a water cooler with, or like a whole lot of like friends and family who are, you know, on the right, or just kind of like la di da, I don't care, life is me. So, um, I guess I'm a little out of touch in the sense that I don't have a lot of the middle friends that I'm trying to like pull over and convince. At this point, like if you don't understand what's kind of going on, in that regard, I'm not really like wasting a whole lot of time trying to like convince you to come over to my side. What I'm more or less trying to do is trying to reach the people who um are affected and
Mhm.
who don't like, fully understand, the process and whatnot, and like, may want to do something, but don't know how to, or don't know have the time to, and having those conversations in that regard. But like I said, I mean, I think that it is increasingly harder to have these conversations, and you're putting, the power into the select few of white folks that have time on their hands, and the voting rights are, increasingly in their favor. And if we're going to change that, like I said, I mean, we need to activate that. I mean, they are the minority, right? So
Yep.
how do we get those other folks to have that say? I have no idea. I mean, a lot of what I do is bring people in person, right? Barrel and Flow and,
Mhm.
the Bayou and the various events is to kind of like bring people outside the online space, because a lot of people are big and tough and they're keyboard warriors, and like, they're getting a lot of information from here, here, and here. But like when you bring them into a room together, like a lot of that dissipates. And
Mhm.
you're able to have like real conversations because you're talking to a human as opposed to an avatar on the, a faceless avatar a lot of times on the other side of the screen. And I feel like, that has helped to some degree, at least in my anecdotal life.
No, I think that's totally true. I learned that myself with a lot of my work, that the goal is to really just try to build community in real life and use these platforms to get people to come into spaces so you can engage with them, especially doing this work as an independent journalist, because, journalism, I have to tell you, has been like totally under attack, and we're now enemy number one as well. And so when people actually get to interact with someone that does this work, I think it sort of takes away that fear of, what they've heard about the fake news, right? And it's like, I'm a community member, I'm a friend, I'm here with you. I was doing a speaking engagement last week because I wanted to add what you had said about how the right are really well organized. They're also really well funded, Day. I mean, this is a really well oiled machine. They are funded from, the billionaire class who has given so much time and money and energy in over the last several decades to hone this messaging really well. And the Democrats, the left, however you want to refer to the other side, quote unquote, they have not invested in that infrastructure. And it was like pulling teeth to get people to understand 10 years ago the impact that independent media was already having. You and I have been in this game a long time. I mean, we both had podcasts, a decade ago, and we're talking about things that mattered in those spaces. But the right knew that, and they were actually creating that infrastructure. And you can really see it with the manosphere now and the incel culture and all of that red pill stuff, because they've built out that structure. And of course, now you've got the trad wives and the women that are willing to carry water for the very thing that is slowly killing them. And so it is really fascinating to me when when I do things with people and I'm like, well, I need to be paid. There's this sense of like shock, like, you want to be paid? You need to be paid. And it's like, yeah, I do. I actually have to eat. And it's fascinating how, on the one hand, you're supposed to do this work out of the goodness of your heart, but on the other hand, they can't understand why we can't get it together on a larger scale. And it's like, well, because, like, to your point, people have to take care of themselves and their families. And so when I think of what you said about, at the end of the day, everything's about white supremacy in this country, I couldn't agree more, or we would have healthcare. Like, it's as simple as that, Eh, Oh, those people would get healthcare. Well, then I don't want it because I don't want
Yeah, I
those
mean,
people to have it. I mean, that's where it all comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, we are a very hyper individualistic capitalist society and whatnot.
Hmm.
When I travel abroad, I see that like, well, when I tra when I travel to black and brown countries, I see
He's like,
so much
asterisk.
more, yeah, so much more communal, like,
Hmm.
of a communal nature and whatnot. People just, it's not like it's, I see people struggle. I went to Honduras, and it was one of the poorest countries, in the world and whatnot, one of the highest rates of violence, but There was a lot of like, poverty and, rundown housing, but there wasn't a lot of like homelessness and there wasn't a lot of people like struggling by themselves. They struggled together, which
Mm,
was like huge. Like I just had never really seen anything like that. I was like, these people are so poor. They got like packs of like even the dogs like run in packs together, right? Like the homeless dogs and whatnot, like they run in packs. Like everybody is packed up out there. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, and it just kind of reminds me of like and again going to Kenya and Japan and like these different like countries that like they just have this sense like less of a we're individuals, you gotta do on your own, but also like less like I get to do whatever the fuck I want, right? Like
right.
just wilding out type, right? Like it's more of a subdued culture, but the trade-off is that like I'm not struggling by myself
Yeah.
in that. And it's wild because you see that in like in America, that you have like, okay, we want to protect our family, like so,
Hmm.
in the family, this, that, and the other, but it doesn't like spread to the like rest of society.
Right.
And but like no other country really has that same like level of guilt as America with black folks, right? Like it's
Mhm.
not as like I just have never seen that, you have the caste systems and various things in other countries and whatnot, but like black folks are, we were slaves up until like a couple of generations ago, right? Like it's like people talk about it like it's like ancient history, but like a couple of generations ago, like my mom went to a segregated school.
Yeah.
Like I was the first generation to graduate from a non-segregated school here in Pittsburgh, like in Braddock, right? Like
Hmm.
that, like we were the first generation. So much of like slavery and second class citizenship, and I mean, and three-fifths, compromise and all these various things and whatnot. Like these are very active here in America. And like you're right, like it has made this hyper individualistic, like, do on your own type situation. And, like everybody's a self-made person or whatever. And if you're not, then, you're not allowed to ask for handouts. Now, again, and that's if you're, a part of the marginalized community, right? Like white men love handouts. Like
Oh, it's
Elon
their
Musk
favorite.
love like yeah, I mean they love a good handout, right? But the game is that like, when it's them, it's like, oh, we're doing it for the better trickle down economics and this, that, and the other, whatever. But when we do it, like we should be ashamed, like,
Yeah.
oh, look at us, like needing a hand. Like, why are you worried about slavery? It was so long ago, right? Like, oh, your ovaries are fine. Like that's not that's not hurting you from anything, right?
Hmm.
And like it is like that the game that they have is kind of wild. And you see it like it's like I won't go back to Europe unless they pay me because while Europe was a lesser degree of America, it wasn't until I started to go into these like black and brown countries that I saw like, oh shit, this is kind of like where it started, right? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, when you talk about like, the Renaissance and like, the Crusades, right? The Crusades when they actually made the others and it was like, okay, we
Hmm.
can we can murder them all in the name of God and whatnot. And then they had like 100 years war. You know how like angry you got to be as a people to war for 100 years. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's a lot, and it's so prevalent in this society, and it does like prevent us from coming together and like having those things like healthcare, and because people are so like, oh, well, I can do it myself, and they should have to do it themselves as well. And they don't realize that the jig is that like we all need each other, top to bottom. But it's only the ones that are that understand that find the success. Like I mean, my success came when I realized that I'm not supposed to do it by myself and that I do need a lot of help. In fact, everybody needs help. And the only people that are like spinning that tail are, the grifters that want us to believe that we should struggle on our own or feel shameful for that. So, I mean, again, that's another one of those things that, until we kind of as a society start to like, peel back and be more vulnerable, in all of that. And that's what I try to do a lot with with again, building the community that I've built. As a comedian, we lead with that, right? We go on stage and we say, here's all of our vulnerabilities. Like, you know what I mean, and those transferable skills, I realized, I call it group therapy. So, as I'm doing my comedy and whatnot, like, and people are laughing at my jokes, they're really laughing at my vulnerabilities that I have now shared with them. And they are like, oh shit, I'm not alone. And then you're in a room full of people that are like, oh shit, we're not alone in this. And then you have a bunch of like friends, right? And that's what I've done, in building a community outside of the stage, is by leading with those vulnerabilities and saying like, hey, I need help. I've always needed help, and by helping me, maybe we could help each other in something, and we could be greater in that. And that's just that's not I don't believe the norm in this society.
No, I agree. And I think it could be. I'm if nothing else, I will always be optimistic because I think you can't build it if you don't dream it. And you can't dream it if you just live in the pessimism of the moment. We have to think beyond this moment and what we could build. And so I try to bring some of that energy into, the work that I do and the communities I build. And that's why it's been so great to get to reconnect with you tonight, because we've known each other a long time and we've intersected over the years in so many ways. And I know you have so many incredible things happening, and you'd mentioned a little bit about it. And I think you have an app too now, or you have
Yeah, so
something
we got
going
an
on
app
with an
now.
app.
Yeah, yeah, no, we got an app. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, a lot of what I do is just kind of, bring people together to, build something that's better than, what they can do alone. And we focus on the Black community, specifically Black women. If you build a society with the least heard, what I mean, with the least powerful in mind, then you make a better society for everyone.
That's right.
And a lot of people don't really understand how close they are to being the person in need, right? Like,
Hmm.
I spent 10 years in social services. And over the last 10 years or so, I've applied a lot of what I learned in social services to, my business and my various endeavors in community building. And one of the things that I quickly learned was that tragedy hits everybody. It doesn't matter how much money you make, or what neighborhood you live in, or, what race you are. Like, ultimately, social services are a thing that everyone needs.
That's right.
And it's so funny that, like, not it's funny, but it's wild how many people, you go in, and you go, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize this could happen to me, right? Like, I like, how did like, it was all good just a week ago, and like, now this is happening. And it could be an accident, or some
Hmm.
sort of illness, or genetics, or something, lose a job, or there's so many different things that can happen in life. And it sucks that compassion is what breeds, experience is what breeds compassion, right?
Yeah.
So oftentimes you need to experience something before you go, oh, okay. A lot of people don't care about sidewalks until they're in a wheelchair. And then they're looking at all the ADA compliances and going like, well, why is this the way it is? Right. And it's because, you weren't thinking about it until it was too late. And I think a lot of people, vote like that, or, carry their lives out like that, where they go, oh, well, why is so and so asking for this, or this, that, and the other, or whatever. And then, they turn around, they lose a job, or they get a bad cough, or something happens,
Hmm.
and then they're in need, and they're going, well, why is society like this? And it's like, well, because you voted for this, because you thought that this day would never come for you. So I think that ultimately a lot of what I do is, just kind of bring folks into this safe space that we've built, with Black women in mind. And we have these conversations across the board, with a lot of various very talented people. It's focused in, arts and entertainment, small business. So the number one form of funding for all arts and entertainment in the world is alcohol. So what we do is we take, we look at this alcohol industry as the economic powerhouse that it is for arts and entertainment, and we utilize that to feed these various movements. When you say that the other side is well funded, You're right. They are well funded. So how do we, find funding on the other end? And it's grassroots movements, right? It's
Hmm.
that, collective bargaining and everybody pitching in a little bit, right? So with the focus of alcohol being like such a economic driver, we get a bunch of people, basically we get a bunch of people around a bar, and we go, hey, uh, shit's fucked up. What should we do about it? And by having these conversations that a lot of people wouldn't have without, kind of like bringing these folks together, and utilizing the economic power of the alcohol industry and the various industries that surround it, we're able to make some changes, uplift some people. We have the first black-owned brewery in Pittsburgh here, Windy Bridges, that just opened up. The first black woman-owned brewery Ultra Genius here that just opened up recently. The first black-owned distillery in the state here that opened up, and all of this happened within the last 3 years. Which is one of the goals that we had set out about a decade ago to happen. So things are happening, things are changing, and we developed this app to kind of keep people more involved and more connected. So with that app, there are various businesses, artists that are a part of the festival, as well as Black Business Directory, Brewery Directory, and other ways in which people can connect to the larger community, various events, and find people that a lot of people are looking for community. A lot of people
Yeah.
are afraid to ask questions. A lot of people don't know where to start. And with this festival, with this movement, with this app, people are better able to connect, and just get outside the house, see some people face to face, have some real conversations, and make some decisions from there.
I love that. And what's the app's name if people want to look it up?
So it's called the Barrels Festival app.
Okay.
So yeah, if you go onto the Apple stores or the Google Plays and whatnot, download that and yeah, connect with us.
Awesome day. I'm so happy we got to do this. Thanks for
Yeah.
jumping on and chatting with me. Would you come back? We can talk some more.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
Awesome.
this has been a pleasure. I miss talking shit into a microphone.
Well, it was a lot of fun and I appreciate you. And I feel like we touched on a lot of important topics. And if you came late, don't worry, you guys. I'm going to be posting this shortly after day. If people want tickets or want to learn more about Barrel and Flow, where can they go?
They can go to barrelandflow.com, or download the app on your Apple Play or Google Play and Apple stores and whatnot. Yeah.
All those spaces. Well, thanks so much for joining me in conversation tonight. I appreciate you, friend. It's great to reconnect as always. And until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, everybody.